Thank you, Senator Wong. We now move to question time, unless someone jumps in the 4 seconds we have. Senator Cash.
Thank you. And my question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Yesterday in question time, in a question from Senator Pocock regarding people like his constituents Sam and Leilani, who are in the gallery, having to choose between housing or heating because of the extreme cost of living pressures they and millions of Australians are now facing, Minister Farrell was asked, what does he say to them? Minister Farrell responded, well, I say to them, welcome to the Senate. If they'd like to identify themselves, I will give them a little wave. Is a little wave all the Labor Albanese government has to offer to Australians who are struggling with the cost of living?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Order. 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 I'm waiting to call the minister. Order. Order. Senator Gallagher.
Thank you, President, and I thank the acting Leader of the Opposition in the Senate for the question. And the Albanese government and Senator Farrell reflected this in his remarks yesterday, place cost of living and easing the cost of living pressures on Australians as a top priority of this government. And everything we have done since being elected has met that challenge. I also note that my colleague, who I am privileged enough to share the bench with here on the government side, is the most courteous and decent person in this Senate, and his remarks yesterday reflect that part of his character. On the cost of living question, on the cost of living, the raw and blatant audacity of the people that have been in power prior to May the 21st, when the Australian people elected us, to come in here after creating some of those cost of living pressures through your own policy inaction and your division and the lack of focus that you had on the Australian people, to come in here and start pointing the finger at us when we have been elected to deal with the cost of living crisis that you lot created. That's right. And everything we have done on every day we have turned up to work since that election has been to deal with this most serious challenge. We understand that cost of living pressures are hitting Australian people hard. We understand that, which is why our policies are so important to implement, more important than ever. And we understand that people on payments are doing it hard. They will receive in the budget the biggest indexation that we have seen in recent times. And we have already committed that we would assess when the budget provides, as we deal with
Minister, your time has expired. Senator Cash, first supplementary.
Thank you. And yesterday in question time, the minister refused to rule out imposing higher taxes on Australians in the budget. I ask you again, will you rule out tax increases on Australians in the budget?
Thank you, Senator Cash. Minister Gallagher, please resume your seat. Minister, please resume your seat. When the Senate is quiet, order. I'm waiting to call the minister. Minister Gallagher.
Thank you. Well, what I will rule out, because I was asked to rule out, we're playing the rule out, rule in game.
Order.
I will rule out taking a lecture from those opposite about tax and spend and fiscal management. They like to present themselves as fiscal conservatives, but we know, because we've got the budget now and we've got the briefings. We know that as you got more out of control as a government, as the former Prime Minister took on more and more of your portfolios and made all of the decisions, that you ripped up and broke the budget. That's what happened. Now, what I can rule out is accepting any lectures, and what I will say is we will be implementing the policies we took to the election, and we will be dealing with the waste, the rorts, the mismanagement and the failed priorities of your term in government. You'll see that in the budget.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Cash, second supplementary.
And will the minister rule out changes to taxes on superannuation in the budget?
Minister Gallagher.
I've answered this question. I have. I've told you what we'll be doing in the budget, and you'll have to wait and see. You'll have to wait and see when we release the budget. But I have told you this will be a bread and butter budget where we implement our policies.
Senator McGrath.
When we implement our policies on tax, we have made it clear that our focus is on multinational tax reform. You've got a pretty high chance of seeing that in the budget. You'll see the policies we took to the election, and you'll see the results of the forensic assessment that we are doing line by line through the budget to make sure that every single dollar that we spend is going where it needs to and where it's going to provide a return to the Australian people. That's what you will see in the budget.
Senator Gallagher. Senator Ruston.
President, on a point of order, I think the question was one sentence and referred to superannuation and the budget. I don't think the minister has said anything about superannuation and the budget.
It also included, the minister was asked to rule out taxes on super. I believe she is being relevant, but she's heard your objection, and if she needs to give further detail, I'm sure in the 8 seconds remaining she will. She's finished. Thank you, Senator Ruston. Senator O'Neill.
Very much, Madam President, and my question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Wong. How's the government delivering on its pledge to return accountability, transparency and integrity to government?
Minister.
Busy legislating to clean up.
I have called the minister, and I think we're waiting for silence so that she can begin her answer.
I remember.
Thank you. I thank Senator O'Neill for her question and for her interest in these matters, which are important to the nation and important to the government, important to the parliament. And today is an important day because we introduced the first government bill to establish a National Anti-Corruption Commission into the House. It is a bill which delivers on a key election commitment first made prior to the 2019 election to establish a powerful and independent anti-corruption body at the federal level. It is a watchdog with teeth, and it is a commitment that we have consistently advocated for, and today we are delivering. The former government, having made their own pledge to introduce a federal anti-corruption body in December 2018, never even got to the stage of introducing a bill. The federal government is the last jurisdiction in this country not to have an anti-corruption commission, and we all know it is past time for that to be fixed. And those of us on this side of the chamber are proud that the Albanese Labor government is just doing just that. Today's bill is a product of an extraordinary amount of work, and it has been shaped by constructive consultation with experts and with members of the House and Senate. It aims to learn the lessons from existing anti-corruption commissions across the nation, balancing the need for transparency with the need to prevent undue damage to reputation. The ultimate aim of this body, once established, is to both prevent and expose corruption at the federal level. The Australian people sent a clear message in the last election that this is what they want. It is now incumbent upon this parliament to deliver. Shortly after introducing the bill this morning, the Attorney-General moved to establish a select committee of both houses to scrutinise the bill. We welcome that scrutiny and the dialogue which will flow from it, reflecting the government's genuine desire for this bill to have support across the parliament. There is no more important task for those of us elected to this place than maintaining the trust placed in us by the Australian people, and today's bill is an important part of that task.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator O'Neill, first supplementary.
Thank you very much, Madam President, and I'm delighted to ask these questions on this very historic day of Labor delivering on a very significant commitment. How will the National Anti-Corruption Commission prevent and expose corruption at the federal level?
Minister.
And I thank Senator O'Neill again for her supplementary question. The National Anti-Corruption Commission established by the bill will be strong and it will be independent. It will have broad jurisdiction to investigate serious or systemic corrupt conduct across the Commonwealth public sector. It will have the power to investigate ministers, parliamentarians and their staff, statutory office holders, employees of all government entities and contractors. It will have discretion to commence inquiries on its own initiative or in response to referrals from anyone, including members of the public and whistleblowers, and referrals will be able to be anonymous. It will be able to investigate both criminal and non-criminal corrupt conduct and conduct occurring before or after its establishment, and it will have the discretion to hold public hearings. It will also have a mandate to prevent corruption and educate Australians about corruption. This will be a significant reform for the nation, and it is a necessary part of rebuilding trust in institutions, including in this parliament, for the Australian people.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator O'Neill, second supplementary.
Thank you, Senator Wong. And how does the government's approach to establishing National Anti-Corruption Commission contrast with previous approaches?
Minister.
Thank you to the senator for her question, and we all know that is a somewhat sorry tale in terms of the past, because, and yes, it may be that Senator Cash might like to add to my remarks, because we do recall that those opposite announced a national integrity body in December 2018, but they never delivered. They never delivered, and in fact one of the more interesting things during the election campaign was watching Mr Morrison try to blame everybody else, that's a change, everybody else for his failure to introduce his own bill. Those opposite didn't even get to the stage of introducing the bill because they were apparently too scared the parliament wouldn't support it. It was everybody else's fault again. It really does show how little they were prepared to work to demonstrate integrity. It shows how little they cared about integrity in government. Well, we will deliver on this promise, and we will keep faith with the Australian people who told all of us very clearly at the last election this is what they wanted. Today we have delivered on our pledge for a strong and independent National Anti-Corruption Commission. I invite those opposite to prove
Wong.
themselves.
Your time has expired. Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Is the minister aware of any authorised deposit-taking institutions or a bank in Australia that have account portability, which allows people to change banking institutions and retain the same account and account number?
Minister.
Thank you. I think this question relates to the debate that we had last night in relation to the cashless debit card. Am I correct? I'll have to come back on the detail because it doesn't fall within my portfolio. I am representing the Minister for Financial Services, so I would be able to answer you.
Beg your pardon. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator O'Sullivan.
My question is about the finance portfolio, and it's about a bank. I haven't asked anything about the cashless debit card.
Senator O'Sullivan, that isn't a point of order. Thank you. Minister.
Thank you. Well, if I can just explain, the Ministry for Finance does not have responsibility for financial services, including ADIs and other financial institutions. They fall under the Treasury portfolio, and we have a specific minister for it, the Minister for Financial Services. Now, I'm coming in here, and Senator O'Sullivan, I am very happy to answer your question. I don't have the detail with me. I think it relates to the debate that I was in and out of last night around the cashless debit card. If I can get an answer for you.
Order.
Well, yeah.
Order.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but when you're repping about 14 portfolios, I do rely on a bit of paper. I do. I'm not going to pretend that I'm coming in here.
Minister.
James, you wouldn't understand.
Order. Order. Senator McGrath. Order. Senator Henderson. Order. Order. Senator Watt, I just called the chamber to order. I don't need you to add to it. Senator McGrath. Order. Seriously, the minister is answering the question. I could barely call order. Just because you don't like what the answer is does not encourage you or give you licence to be so disorderly that I have to say order about 7 times before I can get the attention of the chamber. Minister, please continue.
Thank you, President. And as I said, I do come into question time with the desire to answer the questions that are asked of me, and which is why I'm taking it on notice, because I also treat this chamber with respect, and I don't want to answer something that is not correct and mislead the Senate. So I do take this responsibility seriously. I will come back with an answer based on the advice of the relevant minister who I am repping in this instance.
Thank you, Minister. Senator O'Sullivan, first supplementary.
Thank you. Last night, Minister Farrell told the Senate that neither the account nor card number will change when cashless debit card participants are moved from the CDC to the government's new enhanced income management technology. From a financial institution perspective, does the minister concede that if someone is retaining the same bank account and account number as their old card, that they cannot possibly be moving to a different institution or onto a different account?
Thank you, Senator O'Sullivan. Minister Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you. Well, as I was fortunate enough to be in the chamber last evening for this debate, and we abolished the cashless debit card program, which was a key election commitment of this government. Yes, we did.
They don't like it.
Yes, we did. And what I remember from the debate is you guys fought to the last breath to keep it in place, despite what communities have been asking for.
Minister, please resume your seat. Senator O'Sullivan, I am well aware that you are seeking to move a point of order. When the chamber's quiet, I will come to you. Order. Senator Ruston, you've got one of your own senators on his feet. Senator O'Sullivan.
Thank you, President.
Well, I'm not.
On relevance, my question asks for, on a financial institution perspective, and the minister is going to the broader issue of the cashless debit card.
The minister has 31 seconds remaining, and Minister, wait for the call.
The implementation of the abolition of the cashless debit card and support for those people that would be on it and moving to other arrangements. We are looking for the smoothest opportunity for them to ensure that the transition is appropriate and that they are supported through it. But we have delivered on our commitment to abolish the cashless debit card, and I watched last night, division after division, you lot try to keep it in place. That's what happened last night. That's what history will show, and we will work with communities to make sure they are supported and treated with respect.
Senator O'Sullivan, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. Will the minister now admit that the government has no intention to abolish the cashless debit card and has done nothing more than simply change its name?
Minister.
Thank you. Last night, everyone in this place saw what happened. We abolished the cashless debit card program, a program that you introduced that your own assessments showed was inconclusive.
Please resume your seat. Order. Order. You've asked the question. The minister, Senator Wong, the minister has the right to be heard in silence. Minister Gallagher.
It was a failed program, President. The coalition did not put a cent in the budget past June 30 for support for this. We, on this side, will work with communities to make sure they have the choice and that those communities receive the funding that is required to keep going a range of important social and community supports which were set to be cut by you lot. Yet another one of these terminating measures where there was nothing in the budget to deal with these substantial support programs. Well, we are fixing all of that and delivering on our election commitment to abolish the cashless debit card, and you were on the wrong side of history last night.
Thank you, Senator Gallagher. Senator Steele-John.
I ask this question to the Minister for Finance, Senator Gallagher. Today I ask these questions on behalf of the over 500,000 NDIS participants and their families across the country. Firstly, is it the Minister's view that the NDIS is costing too much?
Minister.
Thank you, President. And we are making appropriate investments into the NDIS. We see it as critical, and as the architects of the NDIS, the party that actually drove the establishment of the NDIS, that designed the NDIS, that reached agreement with all the states and territories at the time, apart from WA, if I remember correctly, because I was the first minister of the ACT, to implement a national scheme to ensure that people who have a disability and their carers are given the support that's required to live a dignified and full life. And as someone who's worked in the disability sector before coming into politics, it was something I felt very proud of as a First Minister of the ACT to be a part of, and something that I worked collegiately with the former Labor government to put in place. I see the NDIS as an investment in people and an investment in the community, and I have no doubt, and I already hear stories from people who are in who receive support or resources through the NDIS about the difference it has made in their life. As the Minister for Finance, I also have a responsibility to make sure that the budget is on a sustainable footing, and there's no doubt that of the 5 programs that are presenting long-term structural challenges to the budget, health, aged care, defence, servicing the cost of $1 trillion of Liberal debt, and the NDIS are those top 5 programs. So from the finance side of things, I have to look at how we can sustainably fund programs, but as a person who's been part of working in the disability sector, I see the investments in the NDIS as an investment in people, and I'm very proud of the reform that the former Gillard government introduced.
Thank you, Senator Gallagher. Senator Steele-John, first supplementary.
Thank you, President. In the October budget, can you confirm, Minister, that there will be no reduction in the allocated funds to the National Disability Insurance Scheme?
Thank you, Senator Steele-John. Minister.
Thank you. Well, this is Minister Shorten's area, and I can say that he is in the work that I'm doing in forensically looking at all the costs through the budget. I know he is applying himself to make sure that every dollar spent in the NDIS is going where it needs to go, and he's been leading that work, and I know that you will have been following that, Senator Steele-John. In terms of additional investments or how what flows through in the budget, you'll have to wait and see. But I can assure you it hasn't been the focus of my attention in terms of looking at areas where we can make sensible savings in the October budget. And I would also point out the way that it is written into the budget or factored into the budget, where there are ups and downs, it's through parameter variations, and that's informed by an actuarial assessment.
Senator Steele-John, second supplementary.
Thank you, President. In relation to funds currently allocated to the NDIS that are not spent in this financial year, can you confirm that if these funds, can you confirm whether these funds will be retained within the scheme, or will they be removed from the scheme?
Thank you, Senator Steele-John. Minister Gallagher.
Well, thank you, Madam President. We will be releasing the budget on budget day, but the way that the NDIS is funded is through parameter variation. Sometimes that goes up and down depending on usage within the scheme. I can assure you it is not the focus of any of the work that I'm doing in terms of looking for additional savings, and I know that Minister Shorten is also going through and looking at how current funding is applied to make sure that it's actually getting to where it needs to be and that we're not wasting money in litigation and those other types of areas, which I know you have also been vocal on, and the government remains committed to fully funding the NDIS.
Thank you, Minister. Senator White.
My question is to the Minister for Finance and the Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. Can the Minister update the Senate on the 2021-22 final budget outcome tabled earlier today?
Minister.
Thank you, President. I feel like I just keep standing today. I can, Senator White. Thank you so much for the question. The final budget outcome shows that we have booked a substantial but temporary lift in revenues, mainly due to much higher than expected commodity prices.
Thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome.
However, many... Okay. All right.
Order.
No, it's not misleading the Senate.
Order. Interjections across the chamber are
Okay, well,
disorderly.
I've got, I've been accused of misleading the Senate President, I can assure you I am not misleading the Senate. And
just
if I
make sure
could
you direct your answers to me.
project my voice over those shouting at me, I could go through and explain. We have booked in revenues, so I'm not talking about payments. In revenues, it is related to higher than expected commodity prices. However, many of the factors driving that improved end result will not be replicated over the medium term. You don't have to dig too deep through the data to get a good sense of the complex and confronting set of challenges we face in the nearer term. We know that the budget is facing sustained pressure into the future, with those opposite leaving Australia with a budget in structural deficit. And despite what they might say, an improved deficit alone is not proof of a strong and thriving economy or a budget. We have a budget weighed down by a mountain of debt that's becoming more expensive to service. In this financial year, $17.9 billion spent servicing $1 trillion of Liberal debt. 17.9, so more expensive than the PBS, more expensive than childcare, more than we spend on a range of government programs is just going into servicing the debt, and that was as of March. That was before the interest rates increase, which of course will add a significant cost to the budget. That is what we are dealing with.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Before I call Senator White, I am once again going to call the chamber to order. Interjections are disorderly. Interjections across the chamber while the minister is on her feet or while a senator is asking a question are absolutely disorderly, and I would ask you not to do that. Senator White, first supplementary.
Can the minister provide more detail on the debt inherited from the previous government and its impact for future budgets?
Minister.
Yes, Senator White. Yes, I can. The government inherited a budget heaving with $1 trillion of debt, with ongoing budget deficits stretching beyond a decade. And as though they would like to rewrite history on debt and they would like to make it all about the pandemic, it had been doubled before the pandemic hit. It had been doubled after making commitments about lowering debt. What they went on before the pandemic was to double it. The facts are very, very clear on that. It's been that we know that the increase in interest rates could add more than $16 billion in costs across the forward estimates and over $120 billion over the coming decade just because of the increasing interest rate impact on debt. At the moment, servicing the debt burden that was forecast in the March budget is costing more than the PBS, more than childcare, more than higher education and more than government schools. That's what's going on.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator White. I have order. Senator Hume. Senator White.
Can the minister provide more detail on the delayed spending from 2021 and its impacts on future budget capacity?
Minister.
Thank you. Thank you, because I have heard those opposite talking about this $50 billion windfall that's hit the budget, and that is looking backwards, I would say, President, as well as the final budget outcome does. But about $20 billion of the improvement to the budget bottom line was through lower payments or underspends. And these were money that the previous government had committed to get out the door in the last financial year, which they didn't get out the door. Well, I'm talking about a proportion of it. Again, Senator Hume, if you listen to me, of the lower payments, a significant proportion of that is programs that are not going out the door, and they will move into this financial year and the financial years beyond. And so that spending will hit the future budget deficits that we're having to manage against a backdrop of increasing pressure in those 5 programs that I spoke to Senator Steele-John. So the budget is in structural deficit and we are working hard to repair it.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, President. My question is to the Minister representing the Minister for Cyber Security, Minister Watt. The Optus data breach has resulted in personal details of millions of Australians being exposed and some of that data being made available online. The Privacy Act 1988 requires Optus to lodge a notifiable data breach report with the Office of the Information Commissioner. Minister, please advise if Optus has met this legal requirement and provided the appropriate documentation to the Office of the Information Commissioner. And from that, please advise the Senate how many Australians had their private data breached. I understand it's almost 10 million people.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Senator Watt.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Roberts, for a really important question, I think, about something that's concerned all Australians. I will have to come back to you on notice with the answers to your specific questions. You've sought some particular figures there that I don't have ready to hand, although I, like you, have certainly heard the reports of the number of Australians being affected to be in the vicinity of $9 or $10 million, but I do want to make sure I give you accurate information about that. But I think what we can all agree on is that Optus's handling of this matter has been very unsatisfactory, and from the issues around its initial disclosure of this data breach to, frankly, its communication with the Australian public and the government about these issues and what it's doing to fix it. So your initial question about whether it had complied with one of its obligations, again, I will need to come back to you on notice, and I'll do that as quickly as I can. But if their track record over the last few days is any indication, then I do have concerns about Optus's compliance with its obligations under the law. But again, I'm happy to come back to you with specific answers.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, first supplementary.
Thank you. Unconfirmed reports indicate that it was not sophisticated hackers who hacked this data. Rather, the Optus Data Sharing Application Programming Interface, API, was used to obtain the huge amounts of data using an exploit that has been in place for 5 years. Minister, is an investigation underway to enforce the provisions of Section 13G of the Privacy Act, including penalties, and is the maximum penalty of $660,000 enough for a disgusting example of corporate malfeasance?
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Roberts. Again, what I can tell you is that the matter is being investigated through a variety of channels. There are issues to do with potential privacy legislation breaches. You probably saw that the FBI is now involved in investigating this matter, in addition to a range of Australian authorities. I will come back to you with a specific answer on the particular type of investigation you were asking about. On the matter of penalties, I think it's been not only members of the government are on the record saying that penalties are insufficient, but even members of the former government were on the record. The very ministers who had responsibility for cybersecurity in the former government were on the record saying that penalties were too low, and despite being in government, they did nothing to fix this problem. Former Attorney General Christian Porter, back in 2019, admitted that penalties were too low. 3 more years went by, nothing happened, and here we are.
Thank you, Minister. Senator Roberts, second supplementary.
Thank you. The previous government circulated legislation for a trusted digital identity bill that watered down privacy provisions, and these are now clearly not sufficient to protect Australians. Minister, is the government going to introduce a digital identity bill? And if so, please explain the logic of putting all the data known about every Australian, including web surfing and social media posts, purchase history, financial history, health data, travel and associations with others in one data file, and to make that available to companies like Optus.
Thank you, Senator Roberts. Minister Wong.
Point of order, President, and I understand Senator Watt will seek to respond to you, Senator Roberts, but I would indicate that I don't think that's a supplementary question. I think you've also switched portfolios, because in relation to government digital identification, it would, I think, be Senator Gallagher, but we'll seek to assist you as much as we're able to.
Minister Watt.
Thank you, President, and thanks again, Senator Roberts. Senator Gallagher, as Senator Wong has indicated, is the responsible minister here, and Senator Gallagher has informed me that this is a priority issue being considered by state, territory and Commonwealth ministers responsible for data management within government, and it is intended to discuss this matter at a forthcoming meeting of the Ministerial Council. More broadly, not only is our government investigating these matters very seriously, but we have already commenced a range of reviews around the Privacy Act, cybersecurity. Those reviews commenced before this latest incident, and frankly, the fact that this incident has occurred indicates that our laws do need a massive overhaul and were left neglected by the former government. So we take these issues very seriously. We're not going to dither like the former government did, and we're not going to leave Australians exposed in the way that the former government did.
Thank you, Ministers. Senator McGrath.
Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell. The Australian Government's ongoing, fully budgeted $10 million per annum wine, tourism and cellar door grants program provides a rebate of up to $100,000 for eligible Australian wine or cider producers to invest in their businesses to attract visitors to wine regions, helping grow Australian tourism businesses and local tourism jobs. Will the Albanese Labor government commit to providing the budgeted $10 million for the 2022 round of the wine, tourism and cellar door grants program?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Senator Wong.
And again, I understand, and I'll stand to be corrected.
Is that a point of order?
It's a point of order about the portfolio. I think the question should probably have been addressed to Minister Watt in terms of where the program lies. I'll see if Senator Farrell can assist in any way.
Senator Wong, as the leader, has advised the chamber that the minister is incorrect, but she's invited Senator Farrell to offer an answer to your questions if he can. On what basis have you just jumped up, Senator McGrath? No. Resume your seat. You either call a point of order or ask your question. I'm going to Senator Farrell now.
Sorry. Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator McGrath, for your question. As the leader indicated, that this is an area of Senator Watt's direct portfolio responsibilities, but knowing something about the wine industry as I do,
I heard it's a particularly nice Sav grown in the
Order.
I'm sure many of those opposite
Order.
have had a taste of it too.
Senator Farrell, please continue.
Thank you, President. And I might also say I mentioned last night about the importance of civility in this place, and you know, if all these people choose to turn up and exercise their democratic right, I like to be civil to the people on the other side, but I also like to be civil for them. And, but
order.
No, I asked them to give me away. So we recognise the importance of the grape and the wine sector to the economic prosperity of regional Australia. And I can say from experience that Australian wine is the best in the world. And
Senator Farrell, please resume your seat. Senator Ruston.
Madam President, my apologies, point of order, President. If the minister is unable to answer the question, I would suggest that he takes it on notice, because the question is actually in relation to a grant program for cellar door tourism, and he has not had any.
Thank you, Senator Ruston.
We offered for Senator Watt to take
Ruston,
the question,
please resume your seat.
but he could address the question.
Thank you. Order. 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 Senator McGrath has asked a question. The Leader of the Government has indicated to the chamber that it was not to the correct minister. I'll invite Senator Farrell to continue to answer the question. It was directed to Senator Farrell. He has willingly stood up to answer the question. Senator Farrell, please continue.
Thank you, President. Look, I'm surprised Senator Ruston, being a South Australian, wants to interfere with my answering of this question, because there's probably no state that's got a greater interest in the wine industry than the state of South Australia. But look, these are issues that are under consideration in the course of the budget, as you'd expect. All of these things are under consideration in the course of the budget.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired.
Reporting back.
Senator McGrath, first supplementary.
Fulsome as always. The Celador Grants program normally opens for applications on 1 July and closes 30 September each year. Given the industry has already waited 3 months for the grant round to open and the usual closing date is just 2 days away, when will the Albanese Labor government give small Australian wine businesses certainty about the future of this program?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Senator Farrell. Order.
I actually agree.
Order. Senators, I'm waiting to call Senator Farrell. Senator Farrell.
Thank you, President, and thank Senator McGrath for that supplementary question. I think the Finance Minister indicated that there are a whole range of areas where in the lead up to the budget there are issues under consideration. Coming from South Australia, of course, we understand just how important the wine industry is to this country. We've seen the neglect of our trading relationship under the former government in respect of China. The way in which you just sat on your hands while we lost all that trade. You're suddenly interested in helping the wine industry in this country. What about the last 2 years? What about the last 2 years when you sat on your hands? You had a chance. You had a chance to repair the damage to China, and you did nothing.
Senator Farrell. Senator McGrath, second supplementary.
The Australian wine industry is facing numerous global challenges. These challenges are being compounded.
McGrath, please resume your seat. I can't hear the question because of the interjections across the chamber. Order. Please continue, Senator McGrath.
The Australian wine industry is facing numerous global challenges. These challenges are being compounded by the government's delays and uncertainty about the future of this program. Why has the government created this funding uncertainty for Australian wine tourism businesses who have invested in their businesses and the Australian economy last year based on the availability of the rebate?
Thank you, Senator McGrath. Minister.
Thank you, President. Thank Senator McGrath for his question. He obviously didn't listen to my last answer, because had he done so, he would have understood that the problems of the wine industry, the problems that you're talking about, that face the wine industry right at this very moment are directly related to the neglect and the failure of the former government in respect of the...
Senator McGrath. Resume your seat. Senator McGrath, when you stand, wait for the call. Do not just announce point of order. And I don't appreciate... Senator McGrath stood up and said point of order before he was called. Senator McGrath.
A point of order.
Thank you.
The question related to it was quite specific to domestic wine tourism in relation to a grants program. The minister is nowhere near within order because he's wandered off into the sunset talking about other things.
Senator McGrath, we don't need the commentary. I'll invite the minister to either answer the question directly or take it on notice, and I'll ask everyone in the chamber to be quiet so that we can hear the answer. Minister.
I wish I had one. Thank you. No, I haven't forgotten. I haven't forgotten. I know exactly what I'm going to say. And coming from Queensland, I appreciate you don't know as much about the wine industry as
Senator Farrell.
Point of order.
Senator McGrath. Order. Order. You just stood to your feet before you were called and called out point of order. You stand, you wait for the call, and then you indicate it's a point of order, not as you are rising to your feet. Senator McGrath.
For misusing points of order. I have a point of order.
Yes.
Okay. The minister has unfairly impugned my reputation by saying I know nothing about the great wine industry of the southern...
Resume your seat. Minister, you've got 22 seconds.
I'm not... President, thank you, and thank you for that point of order. I'm not in any way impugning the Queensland wine industry. I'm impugning Senator McGrath, and I find it difficult.
Senator Farrell, please withdraw that comment. Order. Senator Farrell.
President, I will of course withdraw that.
Thank you. You have 6 seconds left. Order.
I'm not sure how it is possible to.
Senator Ruston and Senator Wong. Your time has expired. Thank you. Senator Faruqi.
Thank you, President. My question is to Minister Wong. A recent report by Oxfam and ActionAid shows that Australia is funding just 1/10 of its fair share of global climate action. As one of the world's largest fossil fuel exporters and as a wealthy colonial country which has contributed significantly to global climate change, this is pretty pathetic. Pacific Island people are on the front lines of the climate crisis despite contributing negligible amounts to global emissions. Recently, Pacific elders visited Parliament and once again called for Australia to do more and to take lead on climate change. Minister, will the government commit to finally paying our fair share of climate finance, which has been assessed at $4 billion a year?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Senator Wong.
Thank you, President, and I thank Senator Faruqi for the question. And I would make the point, I think there are a number of aspects of her question. First, I'll go to the assistance that the government does provide, and I would make the point that over the period those opposite were in government, they cut nearly $12 billion from development assistance. $12 billion. And I regret deeply that the bipartisanship that was offered by us in opposition for continuing the maintenance and the growth in the development in the ODA program, Official Development Assistance Program, was never taken up by either Minister Bishop or Minister Payne. I regret that because it would have been much better, I think, for the country, but also for the people of our region if that bipartisanship had been maintained and there was less of a chase for some of the right-wing populists who opposed development assistance. I think there is a strong national security case for development assistance, there is a strong peace dividend from it, and there is a strong ethical imperative for it as well, given we know we can avert lives being lost, and we can improve education and health outcomes for people who need it so much in our region. In relation to climate, this government has come to office with a much more ambitious commitment on climate change. This will see Australia's emissions reduced by 43%. This will see the vast majority of Australia's energy, notwithstanding that we are an emissions-intensive economy, be in excess of 80% this decade. Now, I appreciate that the Greens do not have the same view about the need to transition. We recognise the need to transition and deliver this in the real world. We have come to office when it comes to development with additional assistance to be provided to the Pacific, which was an election commitment, and I thank my colleagues for that. And we have made clear to Pacific family members the importance of...
Senator Faruqi, first supplementary.
Minister, Australia is currently contributing only around 0.22% of its gross national income towards international aid, and I take your point that the Liberal National Government reduced that to a pittance. And this is extremely low, well under 1/3 of what is recommended by the OECD and almost the lowest it's ever been. And it's totally inadequate to meet our obligations. So, Minister, what is your government going to do? And my question is, will the government increase its overall aid commitments in the upcoming budget, and by how much? And I would actually appreciate an answer to this question.
Your time has expired. Minister.
Thank you. Well, in relation to budget questions, there's been a lot of rule in, rule out, which is a usual political process in the lead up to the budget. And I can remember both Senator Cormann and Senator Birmingham standing here and saying, well, You know, these decisions will be made, and they will be made in the budget, and the budget will be handed down on whatever day it was at that time. And so I'm not going to do the rule in, rule out, but what I would say to this senator is that we made a very clear and costed election commitment to additional funding for ODA, which was announced in the election campaign. Exactly. We did that, in excess of $1 billion over 4 years. That included additional ODA to the Pacific, additional ODA to Southeast Asia, additional $32 million to the Australian NGO Cooperation Program, known as the ANCP. And we did that because it was the right thing to do for Australia, because our security lies in our region, and we have a national interest in doing what we can to make the region more stable and more secure, and we will deliver on that commitment.
Thank you, Senator Wong. Senator Faruqi, second supplementary.
Thanks, President. Minister, will the government commit to ending new coal and gas and establishing a transition authority to support coal and gas communities through a transition to renewable energy?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. Minister Wong.
Thank you. I'm not sure it's a supplementary, but I'm happy to take the question, and I've responded on this front before. And I know this is the political point that the Greens wish to make, and they know that the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change does look to the emissions generated in one's own country, and Australia will be reducing those. In relation to projects, they will, for whatever resource, they will go through the appropriate environmental processes. And we will work with our Pacific Island family members. As members of the Pacific family, we will work with Pacific Island Forum members, because unlike
Senator
those
Wong,
opposites...
please resume your seat. Senator Faruqi.
Point of order on relevance. My question was very specific. It had no lead-in, nothing. I'm asking about new coal and gas, and will the government commit to a transition authority?
Thank you, Senator Faruqi. I believe the minister is being relevant. Please continue, Minister.
Well, I thought I actually specifically answered that, Senator Faruqi, and I know you may not like the answer. I made the point that those projects would be assessed in accordance with Australia's stringent environmental standards. I made the point that the UN Convention on Climate Change does not call upon Australia to do what you are asking. So let's be clear, you are out of step with where the international community is on this issue.
Thank you, Minister Wong. Senator Polley.
Yes, Madam President. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry, Senator Watt. Can the Minister please give an update to the Senate on the progress of the Exotic Animal Diseases Preparedness Task Force, which was announced last month? Minister.
Thank you, President, and thank you, Senator Polley, who I know has a long history as a supporter of the agriculture industry in Tasmania. It's important to remember that Australia does remain free of foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease. But while that remains the case, we must remain vigilant to biosecurity threats at our borders. Our three-pronged approach of helping Indonesia deal with their outbreak, strengthening our borders and improving preparedness is vital to ensure that we continue to remain free of these potentially devastating diseases. Last month, I created the Exotic Animal Diseases Task Force to ensure that Australia is fully prepared should an outbreak occur. And that's because good governments plan for the best and prepare for the worst. The task force was co-chaired by senior experts in the Department of Agriculture and what was then the Emergency Management Australia, bringing together the experts in biosecurity and animal health within our government, along with experts in disaster management. I can confirm that the task force has now completed its assessment of Australia's preparedness if an exotic animal disease were to reach Australia. The task force conducted 4 weeks of rigorous testing of national biosecurity and emergency management plans. They undertook specific scenario exercises to test arrangements already in place to respond to incursions of foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease, including for multiple outbreaks across multiple jurisdictions. The task force worked closely with state and territory governments, industry and Indigenous communities to ensure a national coordinated view was captured. The task force liaised with our Indonesian counterparts on how they have managed their outbreak, as well as looking at the UK's FMD outbreak in 2001, as well as COVID outbreaks and recent natural disasters in Australia to see what lessons could be learned from those events. The exercises conducted by the task force also stress-tested how Australia's biosecurity plans interact with national emergency management. This way, we know we can organise a rapid response across Commonwealth, state, territory and industry partners.
Your time has expired. Senator Polley, first supplementary.
Thank you for that leadership, Minister. But can you outline any findings that have been made by the task force and whether any of the recommendations—
Order. 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 Senator Polley, please continue. You have.
I haven't finished.
Order. Order.
Oh, no, Murray, now you've blown
Order.
No one knew before this. Couldn't possibly know what to answer.
Senator Polley, have you finished your question?
I haven't finished my question.
Please
Would you like me to start it again?
Order. Order.
With the leadership bit put in. That's it.
Tell them about your snorkel.
Senator Polley, please continue your question.
The leadership demonstrated by the minister has been outstanding. Can you tell us whether or not any of the recommendations from that report will be accepted by the government, Minister?
Minister.
Thank you, President. And Senator Polley, I would love nothing more. I apologise for being so eager to talk about this task force's work. Overall, I am pleased to advise that this review has found that our biosecurity system is strong and sound, particularly in prevention and mitigation. There is good reason to expect that Australia will remain free of these diseases well into the future, although, as I've put on the record before, the risk is certainly there. The review also found that some of our biosecurity responses do need to be updated to be current with the times and with the technology we now have. For example, the review suggested that a COAG instrument that hadn't been looked at since 2002 should be updated to better fit our modern times. The review also made suggestions around better crisis communications capacity, regularly updated national plans, improved data collection and improved collaboration with states and territories. These suggestions are now being implemented. This is why the work of the task force was so important, so in the unlikely event of an incursion we are well prepared to limit the spread and impact of these foreign diseases.
Thank you, Minister. Your time has expired. Senator Polley, second supplementary.
Can the minister outline what the next steps are to ensure Australia is well prepared to respond to any potential major biosecurity outbreak?
Thank you, Senator Polley. Minister.
Thank you again, Senator Polley. As part of Australia's strongest ever response to a biosecurity threat, our three-pronged approach will continue to serve us well as we fight to keep foot and mouth disease out of our country. But we must remain vigilant to this threat and continue to improve our responses going forward. This work will now lead into and inform Exercise Paratus, a live boots-on-the-ground foot and mouth disease-based scenario to be undertaken with states and territories next year. We are also continuing our support for Indonesia to assist them control their outbreak. As of last week, I'm pleased to report that 250,000 doses of lumpy skin disease vaccine supplied by Australia had been administered to Indonesian livestock, while Australia's supply of 1 million foot and mouth disease vaccines had been distributed, with 600,000 being delivered to the island of Bali alone. A further 3 million vaccines will arrive in the coming weeks, and we've also trained more than 300 local officials with specific focus on technical aspects of vaccine delivery, biosecurity management and record keeping.
Thank you, Minister Watt. Senator McDonald.
My question is to the Minister for Finance and Minister representing the Treasurer, Senator Gallagher. On Tuesday the 13th of September at the Regional Australia Institute National Summit, Minister Catherine King said, "This government has committed to delivering $1.5 billion to construct common user marine infrastructure at the Middle Arm Sustainable Development Precinct near Darwin. Is your government still committed to the Middle Arm project in the Northern Territory?"
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister.
President, and I think Senator McDonald would know that we agreed to that as part of our election campaign, and Minister King's comments that you referred to reflect that. There is a range of other spending around that program. I think in the budget it was funded as part of a broader package with other elements in it, and we are currently working through all the details around that. We want to make sure that there is appropriate business cases, due diligence, that the spending is the right amount of spending that should be allocated to that, and that's the work that I've been reflecting on for the last question times in here about doing that assessment, essentially, that every dollar that was committed in the previous government's last budget actually is quality spending going where it's needed, and that's the work we're doing.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McDonald, first supplementary.
A week later, on Tuesday, the 20th of September, at a press conference with the Treasurer in reference to the Middle Arm project, Minister Gallagher said, "We are looking at them all of those commitments, line by line." But when 7 days earlier Minister King outright committed to the project, Minister, who is telling the truth, you or the Infrastructure Minister?
Minister.
It's a shame you can't rewrite your supplementary questions on the fee in light of the answer that I just gave. In that press conference, we were asked around a range of programs, and we are reviewing all of them. We are reviewing every single measure in the budget, but there are a range of measures that we matched. Now, the work we are doing is to make sure that the money that was allocated is the right amount of money to go to that program, because, forgive us over here, but some of your budgeting was pretty dodgy, to be honest. And so we are going through. We are a grown-up government where ministers do their jobs. We don't have a Prime Minister taking responsibility for every portfolio and making decisions based on apparently nothing. We want the evidence, we want the assessment, and the ERC, as a collective, will make decisions based on that.
Thank you, Minister. Senator McDonald, second supplementary.
So, still no clarity on the commitment or not commitment. On September the 11th, as reported in the Sydney Morning Herald, a spokesman for Infrastructure Minister Catherine King signalled further cuts to the Regional Accelerator program and the Energy Security Plan were likely. There are a few elements of both the Regional Accelerator Fund and the Energy Security and Regional Development Fund that were matched during the election or in a subsequent decision will be funded in some form. Can Minister Gallagher confirm what the few elements are?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. Minister.
Thank you. Well, I don't think I could have been clearer about the original question, because I did answer that straight up. In terms of the other outcomes of the decisions that we've been taking through the budget process, you will see those reflected in the budget process. Like, as you did in your budget, we are going through them line by line. Where we have to make some savings, we have to reprioritise, we have to make sure that the precious dollar that's going out the door is actually going where it's needed. In some cases, grants under your government went where proponents didn't even know they had applied for it.
Minister,
so we
please
would like
resume your seat. Minister, please resume your seat. Senator McDonald.
It was a specific question. Can Minister Gallagher confirm what the few elements are?
Thank you, Senator McDonald. The Minister is being relevant to your question.
Thank you. I've answered the question.
Thank you. Minister Wong.
I ask that further questions be placed on notice.
Thank you.